It's Tuesday night, 8 o'clock, and this is the Bob Leonard Show. We'll be with you for about an hour, and like we tell you every week, we take the stories you've been reading about in your newspaper and watching on television, and we put our spin on that story. We tell you what's behind the story based on our experience of 23 years as a prosecutor and in government and in politics. And most of these stories involve government and politics and how people run things. You know, the stories you see generally on television are, feel-good stories put out by the politicians or the government officials, the business people, the union officials. They're not going to tell you the mistakes they're making. That's what we do. We try to find the mistakes they made that they're trying to cover up, and we bring it to you so that it gives you a better idea of how well your politician or your elected official is doing in office. And that's what this is all about. Now, this program will be repeated on Wednesday night, tomorrow night from 11 to 12. And then if you have a computer, just go to the website flinttalk.com, and it runs continuously. Just punch it in and the program starts for you. So if you miss it, there's someplace else that you can see it. Now, we have a number of things we've got to get to tonight, and we're going to have to move through them quickly if we're going to get to them all. Here's today's paper, Tuesday, the Flint Journal, June 26th. And you might remember the allegations made against Williamson and his wife Patsy Lou when she was running for state senator against John Gleason last year. And some of Williamson's just mean-spirited opponents charged that he violated the campaign laws to help his wife, and that he was using city employees to help her in violation of law. Today, Williamson cleared. Charges of campaign law violations dismissed. Here's what the Secretary of State's office has found: no evidence of wrongdoing by Mayor Don Williamson or his staff for sprucing up Woodlawn Park last year, just prior to a campaign event for his wife. Most complaints allege violation of campaign finance laws against Williamson and key city staff were dismissed because of lack of evidence, according to the letter from the Secretary of State. The allegations were dismissed because, quote, the evidence submitted does not establish that there may be reasons to believe that violations occurred. This is what this Corrigan woman said from the Secretary of State. Now, one of Williamson's most ardent enemies, Alex Harris, a Flint resident and one of those who accused Williamson of violating the campaign finance law, lashed out after hearing about the decision. Quote, "You got to be an absolute moron to conclude city employees were not used to aid the Senate campaign," Harris said. Well, no, he doesn't even know the Secretary of State and is referring to him as a moron. But that's typical. They shoot from the hip. Now, here's what the evidence showed. One city worker testified work was done in preparation of Patsy Lou Williamson's party, but the Secretary of State's office noted that several other workers testified to the contrary. The letter also dismissed allegations that the Senate campaign stole city water for use in its rented street sweeper, citing campaign finance records that appear to indicate the water was paid for. So Williamson has been cleared of that, and that's one where, remember, the city council held hearings, subpoenaed people, went through this whole thing, spent all your money, thousands of dollars, hired an attorney to come in and represent them in this hearing. Thousands. And it was nothing. Now, they're still looking at the Patsy Lou Williamson contributions, whether or not there was any violation of the campaign laws because of her involvement with her corporation. And they're still looking into that. Also in this journal page article on the June 26th, it says here, judge again orders mayor to reinstate city employee. For the second time in a month, Genesee County Circuit judges ordered Mayor Don Williamson to follow the ruling of the Flint Civil Service Commission and put a fired water pollution control supervisor back to work. Case was fired in the spring of 2006 after the Flint Journal reported that he approved $44,000 in on-call overtime for water waste treatment plant operations. Case's attorney, Dean Yoda, said he doubts Williamson will respect Nethercutt's new order, but Williamson's lawyer, Fred Campanella, objected to the comment. What do you object? I think Yoda is probably right. Says Yoda said the case will again try to go back to work. I said last week that Williamson ought to make an effort to get this thing settled, obey the judge's direction, and put the guy back to work. Maybe he's eliminated the position. He can put him back someplace, and I think that's what the judge's order is all about, to put him back to work someplace. And I think he should. Now, you know, this matter with Career Alliance gets more bizarre every day. Remember, investigative reporter from the Journal, Ron Fonger, has been on this matter for some time, and his investigation has caused all this review now that has really is a good indication of what investigative reporters are supposed to do. Remember, this is the nonprofit organization that receives over $20 million a year, most of it from the federal government, federal taxes that we pay, to distribute to other nonprofit agencies that work on preparing the chronically unemployed for work. And the concept is good. But as you'll see, in practice, something else happens. The State Labor Department is investigating Career Alliance for alleged misuse of money, including misuse of Career Alliance credit cards, entering into contracts with companies owned by friends, and in some cases, maybe relatives, and that's being investigated. The investigation also is looking at members of the Career Alliance Board of Directors that the state says have serious conflicts of interest when money is being dispersed from Career Alliance's $20 million slush fund, I guess we can say, to agencies which some of these board members work for. It is alleged some of the board members are distributing the money to themselves and their organization they work for, and that end up paying them their salaries. Now, this investigation is also looking into the possible impropriety of the board members that have these conflicts approving the enormous salary and benefits for their executive director, Pan Loving. They give her a nice raise. She assigns money to their various organizations and agencies. She's making $215,000 a year in salary and benefits. Her salary is higher than any Flint School District employee or administrator or any county government executive. The Flint Journal said in an editorial on this subject that her outrageous salary results from questionable padding allowed by the rubber stamp board of directors. Pretty serious things. Now, last week I told you that reporter Ron Fonger was stirring up a hornet's nest with his investigation because he was indicating from just his reporting that there may be criminal activity going on here. You know, what he has revealed so far could very well amount to a serious crime. Now, since that time, I'm told the matter has generated such noise at the state level that the governor is receiving periodic updates on the direction of the investigation. Keep in mind, there's 27 of these organizations around the state, but this is the one they're having the problem with, apparently. So they want to send a lesson or a message to the other 27. You know, you screw around like this, you're going to be in trouble. Also, we found out agents from the FBI, Organized Crime and Racketeering Division, are already questioning witnesses about some phony phone contract. Also, I'm told that the Genesee County Board of Commissioners Chairman Archie Bailey will soon be talking to the sheriff about possible criminal actions that could be brought in this case. He will be investigating. Now, here's some of the latest information dug up by Fonger that again demonstrates the Career Alliance and its members and its board of directors are you really using this Career Alliance as their little candy store, their own candy store. Here's the in the last Friday's paper, June 22nd, 2007. Career Alliance probe to deepen. Here's what it says, some of it. An outside investigator apparently will probe deeper into charges of accounting irregularities and lack of controls over credit card expenditures by Career Alliance, Incorporated. Michael Zelli, chairman of the Genesee Shiawassee Workforce Development Board, said Thursday that he wants an independent expert to monitor and compliance to look at more than 24 unresolved problems raised by the state monitors at the $20 million a year job training agency in Genesee and Shiawassee County. Goes on to say the board will hire, that is the board of directors of the Career Alliance, will hire an independent consultant to conduct an investigation and submit an itemized report to the board analyzing each of their concerns. Now, went on to say, Bailey says, I'm glad that I made the recommendations and that they are following it. He said he was troubled by the reports from the state monitors about the condition of Career Alliance. Keep in mind, Career Alliance was set up by the Genesee County Board of Commissioners. That's why they're involved in this thing. They appoint a large number of these 26 or 27 member board of directors. They appoint some. The city of Flint appoints some. And they put it in operation, so they have a clear concern about what goes on here, and they should be monitoring, and I'm not so sure they're doing it. It says Louis Driscoll, vice chairman of the Workforce Development Board, which is the board that runs the Career Alliance, said the group has few options because members have relied on information from Loving in the past that doesn't necessarily jibe with the state information. No kidding. It is charged with overseeing the delivery of job training and other services. That's Career Alliance. State officials have outlined 27 unresolved issues involving Career Alliance. And the fellow from the state has described many of the problems as chronic. Among them, lack of control of credit card purchases, checks being paid without proper supporting documentation, and what the state has characterized as falsification of reported job retention statistics by Career Alliance service provider. Now that's the obtaining money under false pretenses, if that can be established, because it's, it's a con job. But the state has characterized as falsification of reported job retention statistics by Career Alliance service provider. Now that's the obtaining money under false pretenses, if that can be established, because it's, it's a con job. But And we saw this. Labor Chief blasts a unit. Here's another one. CEO salaries gets a look. Career Alliance may toss its plastic, talking about their credit cards. Auditors question job unit. This is the state auditors. And then the Journal writes a editorial criticizing the salary that they're giving to Pam Loving. And here, look at this book here. Career Alliance Connections. I mean, this thing runs 48 pages of, glossy printed book, which I'm sure costs a lot of your money to print. Interesting enough, Pam Loving, who is the chairperson, or the executive director, I should say, of the Career Alliance, has her picture in here 34 times. Hey, come on. What's that all about? Well, anyway, now according to this Journal story I just read to you by Fonger, he reports that the Chairman Bailey has informed him about this partner that he's bringing in to investigate this, an independent investigator that is going to be hired by the executive group of the Career Alliance. It's the Pam Loving and all of the high officials, the board of directors, and this has all been approved by the county commission to look into these allegations. Now let me tell you something about this. This is a kind of a plan. I've seen it. 23 years as a prosecutor tells me this is nothing more than a cover-up effort. It's going to whitewash this thing. All the people who engaged this investigator have their asses hanging out because many could be guilty of committing crimes. Do you really think that they'd pay money to a guy to find evidence that they are guilty of a crime? In my opinion, he's there to make sure that wrongdoing gets put under the carpet. It's whitewashed. Now, that's what they hope. That's what they hope, and I think logic tells you that he's not going to go in there and clean house because his salary is being paid by these people. His contract is being paid by them. Now, I think it might be, even though they're trying this, I think it might be too late. Do you know the FBI is investigating? The State Labor Department is investigating. The Sheriff Department, I think, is going to get into the investigation. The governor is involved. Now, these people who could be guilty of a crime, are trying to head off this formal investigation. I don't think they can do it because of these moves by these other agencies. I think it's too late. The ball is rolling. And I'm told, as we're speaking here, that the board of directors of Career Alliance, in an effort to try to cut off any more allegations by Fonger in the newspaper and investigation by them, and to convince the other agencies who are investigating them that they've got it under control now. They're in the process of negotiating a salary with Pam Loving that will be satisfactory, and she can leave. That's in the process of being worked out now. Now, there's some political intrigue here that you have to keep your eye on. Stanley and Loving are good friends for years and years and years. He helped put her into that Career Alliance job. And he's a county commissioner. And the county commission may be in trouble themselves for not monitoring this program, or they certainly could look bad from a political standpoint, so they don't want all this stuff coming out. So when they say they're interested in getting to the bottom of this, I have some question about that, because my experience tells me they're going to try to cover it up, especially if they look silly. You know, Bailey and Stanley are friends. Bailey owes Stanley for helping him get elected county commission chairman. Now, he may be asked to help Pam Loving, but I know Bailey, and I think he's smarter than that to get involved in that. So we'll be watching that. Now, this week yet, I think that Fonger will have another article about some other misuse of funds that has been established. In fact, Career Alliance has brought it up, $100,000 misused in regard to one of their agencies they work with that misused the money or stole the money or did something with the money that they weren't supposed to do. It's missing, in other words. Keep an eye on that. Fonger will be coming out with that this week. Well, let's go on here. You know, last week I talked to you about the Greenview Manor fiasco. You remember that? That's the apartment that HUD, Housing and Urban Development, federal agency, wanted renovated. There was something like 81 apartments. It's in there near that 3rd Avenue corridor, and they're trying to pump that area up. That they wanted to take these 81 one-bedroom apartments, which nobody really wanted to rent. And keep in mind, it was for low-income people. These apartments were, and they wanted to renovate the 81 or 82 apartments and build something like 41, 42 2-bedroom and 3-bedroom apartments. Costs around $500,000. The HUD, the federal agency, told the city back when Stanley was mayor of Flint that this work had to be done. Then Kurtz put it off like Stanley. Now it comes to Williamson and he's trying to do it, and he needs the $500,000, requests that it come from the major grants, which is federal money, not local money. HUD has agreed to give them the $500,000 out of major grants for the renovation of these apartments for low-income people who are out there living in tents or in houses where there's no running water, condemned houses. I mean, these apartments are needed. So here we are, and last week I mentioned this to you. We have this thing postponed for a year by Carolyn Sims, whose ward it is in that area, and had the support from Councilman Neely, who's running for mayor, to prevent this from going through. And I told you last week that HUD told the mayor and told the city administration that if they didn't get on this job and start to work on this renovation of the Greenview Manor apartments, they would lose the $500,000 the federal government has set aside in major grants for this purpose, and the city would still have to do the job and would have to spend, when this federal money was lost, local money coming right out of our general fund that we use for roads, we use for whatever the city uses it for, health purposes. You know, why would we want to afford that? Now, we raised hell with Sims and Neely last week about this. Now, something has happened since then. It's changed. All of a sudden, after a year's delay, after our program, it's changed. They are now going to provide the money and let it come from the general grant or the major grants division and use the federal money. Listen to the man that came up and made the comments about hearing about this Greenview Manor fiasco and what he had to say. Can you play that, please?
There you go. I really think the city council should reconsider the $500,000 to fix up the apartment. I guess it's an apartment complex. I guess we'll have to really put some money into it, but I really think whenever we get HUD funding, unfortunately the mayor, I understand you can't really work with the mayor at all, but it looks like our choice is either do whatever he wants or lose HUD funding. So I think this, from what I've heard, unfortunately I can only get my news from the Bob Leonard show. It sounds like a great project. But I think that when this issue comes up again, the council should look at that. Another issue.
Well, see, we do some good on this program because he raised the issue. He said he heard it on the Bob Leonard show. It is kind of a complex issue, and that's why we take time to explain it. I mean, if you read it in the paper or you're watching on television, you got 60 seconds to 90 seconds at most to explain it. You can't explain it that quickly. But we take 15, 20 minutes to explain it here, and that man understood it and said, what the hell's going on here to this city council? Well, lo and behold, after last week holding it up again and trying to prevent it from coming up for another month or so, see what happens last night with regard to the Greenview Manor. Can you play that, please?
Our next item on page 11, 070622 and 073623. And I think Mr. Neely made some excellent comments about us spending our spending that money. I think it was some great efforts. I'm more concerned with you so much support of this. I support you. I don't know if that's true, but I don't have that brings to my law, so I have to ask a question. No, I'm just saying this, President. But the question is this, my discussions have been up to Nancy here. As I understand it, the discussion with the grant department is that HUD's been looking at us to spend this money. And if we don't exercise our right to spend this money, then we may have to pay this money back out of the general fund. And that's something that we cannot afford to do. Many of my colleagues, senior colleagues, having other discussion items on this help steer me with regards to this, because I don't want to use any more of my general fund dollars if we can use federal dollars for the renovation of these properties. And I'm open to listening to my colleagues. Mr. Gonzalez.
I think Neely hit the nail on the head. And basically, if you don't spend the money that HUD has dictated to us to use on a certain project that they tell us to use it on, but we lose the money and have to pay it out of the general fund. We should have moved on this a long time ago, in my opinion. I support Greenview Manor here and moving $500,000 to improve that neighborhood.
Any further discussion? Madam Sam.
Thank you. Because I wasn't here last week when this came before us, and I wasn't here earlier today, I'm just wondering if my questions have been answered. And again, Mr. Neely, it is in your ward, and and I respect your wishes, but I'm just wondering if the administration through the grants department answered those questions, if there were some issues.
Well, to answer your question, the administration didn't provide us any answers, but I did ask questions of the grants department. I think the question that I asked was if they were total certified, if they're agreement with the city of Flint and Commissioner Peter are going to be honored as we have to honor the agreement with the city of Flint and HUD are going to be continuing for that same type of agreement, and it is the case. But my biggest concern is not to lose these dollars, and as it was expressed to me, like one of Mrs. Joker and her department saying that if we don't using our general fund dollar. And that's something that I don't believe in. I think I talked about the same issue on another property in our ward, which was you go to 629 North Street or something like that last year. Finish this project, and we have to pay money back to the revenue. And send it to me. I'm sharing with you all, and I hope that you all have any insight. Please let me know. Because I don't want to get this out. I definitely don't want to use it out of our budget. But Council President McCain and his support of this makes me a little concerned.
This is a good project. We can bring on other issues besides this one. Any other discussion? Hearing none, roll, Madam Clerk. Mrs. Slaughter? Yes. I'm losing brain cells, not that many.
Mr. Leonard?
Yes.
Mr. Leonard?
Yeah. Yes.
Mr. McKay?
No.
Mr. Buchanan?
Yes.
Ms. Fowler?
Yes.
Mr. Nelson?
Yes.
Ms. Hill? Yes. Ms. Sims?
I'm going to abstain from this one because I'm not real sure that my particular questions have been answered, so I'm just not comfortable voting on this at this time.
Thank you.
Vote is 7 yes, 1 no, 1 abstention.
Well, there you go. You know, we do some good on this program. I mean, this thing was held up for over a year, because Williamson wanted it. They didn't care whether or not it would hurt or help people. They're mean-spirited, some of these people, and just wanted to prevent Williamson from getting anything he wanted, even if it helped people. And our program mentioned that last week, and we obviously embarrassed them because they start getting some heat from their constituency. People have watched this program, and that's what changed it around. But why would that have to be? A year and a half. A year and a half this has been held up. People could be living in those apartments now. People who are living in condemned houses, they're living out on the street because these fools wanted to, take on Williamson, whatever he wants. I mean, some of the stuff he wants is ridiculous. And I can see them challenging that. I think that that's legitimate. But where they challenge things just to challenge him because he's asking for them, and it hurts our citizens, our most needy citizens, it's not acceptable. Here we have Neely. This guy is running for mayor. Did you hear what he said? He went to see Nancy Jerkowitz and Major Grants to find out if what I said last week was true, that if we didn't use the money, we'd have to use local money. She told him, yes, that's right. That's exactly right. That's what HUD has told us. Now the question is, this guy's a city councilman. He's running for mayor. He didn't even know it. He's been screwing people now for a year and a half, and he didn't realize he was doing it. Or he didn't care, just because Williamson asked for it. And this guy wants to be mayor? Come on. Come on. Gets a little silly. Well, again, on another project we talked about here, when I first mentioned the senior citizen millage proposal on this program last June, we told you that there was going to be trouble because various special interests all had different plans on how to spend $80 million of senior citizen millage money. That was overwhelmingly voted in by the voters last August. We told you then that we opposed the millage ballot proposal because there was no guidelines to tell the voters how the money was going to be spent. We got a lot of talk from the people that were supporting it. And the big pushers on this were the 17 senior citizens that were in existence then, receiving local money to exist, and the senior citizen directors and their staff. And I'll tell you why in just a moment. But we told you then that the first order of business with this millage, notwithstanding what they talked about, how they were going to use it to Wheels on Meals, getting people that are seniors that are homebound that couldn't go to the center, how they would receive meals delivered to them, how they would have transportation to the doctors and to the grocery store, how they would receive all kinds of benefits like from visiting nurses. Now, since this has been passed, all that discussion was before it passed to convince the public to vote for it. It sounded like a good idea. We're not opposed to senior millage if they had the criteria so you could tell what they were going to do with it. Here, we told you, the first order of business we predicted, they'd use the senior millage as a substitute for local money already being spent by local government to finance the local senior citizen centers. That's exactly what they've done. First thing up. Nothing about all these other things they talked about beforehand. The second order of business would be to increase the wages and benefits already being paid by local money to senior citizens, directors, and staff. Those are the people. Here's the story here. Weighing in the ins and outs of the potential senior authority split. And this is in the Journal on June 16th. Here we have a battle between Richfield Township and Davison Township in the city of Davison. And the reason the battle is on is they want to pay their senior citizen director, like I think she's making $38,000-40,000. They want to go up to $65,000-70,000, whatever. Anyway, it's almost doubled. With this new money, this new senior citizen millage money. And then they want to add staff. We told you that was going to happen, and that's exactly what's happening. And this was really kind of a scam in my mind. What the senior citizens centers did, and keep in mind the senior citizen centers only service about 8, 9, 10% of the senior citizens. 90, 91, 92% of the senior citizens don't even use the centers. They don't like to play checkers. I'm being facetious, but you know, that this money was meant for the other 90% of the people. The centers were already being paid for. Now we're changing that over, and the money is going to be used to build up the senior citizen centers, to renovate them, and the salaries. The senior citizen directors are already meeting. It's in the Journal, meeting to talk about how to use this money to get the salaries up. I mean, this was in the paper. How to increase their staff. This is the only discussion that's going on, apparently. This is exactly what we said was going to happen. Well, all that money they said was going to be used for the Meals on Wheels, the visiting nurses, the transportation to doctors' offices, to grocery stores. That's not happening. $80 million they got out there for 10 years. It's about $8 million, $9 million a year. That's why we were opposed to it. And I think we were right. You know, all the talk since last August when this thing was passed, and it was passed because these senior citizen supporters and the directors and the staff put together a meeting or a number of busloads of people, buses, carried them down to a county board meeting and intimidated the county board into putting this on the ballot because it's going to pass. It's something like 40 or 50 senior citizen projects like this, millage in 40 or 50 counties around the state. Every one of them passed. And they knew that if they could get it on the ballot, it would pass. And we said that the whole idea was to take the burden off the local government. Now the local government, when the burden's taken off, can use that money they were using for the local senior citizen centers and other things. Raise wages, travel to conferences. So what they're doing by indirection is something they couldn't do by direction. They could not take that senior citizens money and pay for staff of city government, and township and village government who have these senior citizen centers, because that would be illegal. So what they do it by indirection. They give it to the senior citizen center, and then the local money being used for the senior citizen center is now redirected in the city areas of government which the money was not intended in the first place. But anyway, they come down here in busloads and coerced, intimidated the county commission to put on the ballot, and it passed overwhelmingly. We knew it was, but that's why we opposed it. But anyway, let's go on. All we're saying on that, we told you this was going to happen, it is happening. You know, for 2.5 years now, this program has also been complaining about the ambulance service provided by the city folks versus what county residents can expect. The county program revolves around the efficient paramedic sheriff's department program. Does an excellent job. Paramedics have called, are at a home, and they have districts. They keep circulating, and when a call comes from the farthest place where they are, it takes them less than 6 minutes to get there, which means they probably can save the life on a cardiac arrest patient. City of Flint doesn't have that. None of that. I think this deficiency in the city program vividly demonstrates the city ambulance response is contaminated with racism. Let me tell you why. Often ambulance companies that are supposed to be serving Flint ignore calls to certain areas of Flint, mostly poor and African American areas, because they claim that it's dangerous and they don't want to go out there, or they don't think they could get paid because they're low-income people and what have you. Now, if you get a call, these ambulance companies get a call out for Miller Road or off Court Street in the wealthy area or the middle-income people's area, they show up. Now, Stephen Todd, who was head of the 911 project in Flint, who runs the 911. We have two of them. We really should have one, but we have two of them. One in Flint and one outside for the county people. He agrees that when he tries to get ambulances to go to houses when they're needed in certain areas of the city of Flint, he would point them out, and they're all the African American areas. He can't get them. We had a man on this program, went to his house and interviewed him, where he said he called for an ambulance for an hour, over an hour, because his wife was having symptoms of a heart attack, and he told the 911 operator that this was happening. Called a number of times. Finally, the ambulance got there an hour and a half later. Didn't even know where the hospital was from the house. It was an out-county ambulance. Took her, put her in the ambulance, took her to the hospital. On the way to the hospital, she died tragically. The tragedy was, besides her passing, was the doctor saying in the emergency room that if the woman could have been gotten there 15 minutes earlier, they probably could have saved her. Black woman, black man, black community, black neighborhood. You know, that's got to be changed. Even the city council people who should be kicking the door down over at the county building saying, we want the same service you're giving the county. We want to see that our people are taken care of, that people show up in 6 minutes to save their lives. Well, maybe it's going to happen. Here's an editorial from the Flint Journal. Now, I might say to you that Archie Bailey, who's the county commissioner, has told me time and time again that this problem was going to be fixed because I've been raising hell about this for over 2 years now, 2.5 years. On this program, on my radio program, I mean, we constantly raise the issue, saying that it's nothing but a racist program and it's got to be corrected. But the city council, which is made up of a majority of black people, you never hear them say a thing about this. Nothing. It's their people that are dying. Their constituents. Here's what the ambulance progress. Sheriff Riggs taking over runs in Flint advances EMS reform. Odds on finally reforming Genesee County's flawed ambulance system have improved greatly with the apparent agreement that the sheriff paramedics will take over emergency runs in Flint now performed by the city fire department. Such an arrangement starting in January would bring multiple benefits, most significantly to those needing swift care who can't always count on it. Fixing this deficiency in the ambulance network, unfortunately, is not half the problem stymieing officials, but eliminating the fire department should remove one potential obstacle to the more efficient emergency system. Still, to be decided is how to pair the plethora of private companies hustling the business, sometimes unreliable, and mesh them with the sheriff's paramedics into a well-organized and accountable EMS service, emergency medical service. Now what they're saying is, look, the paramedics get to the location, but they don't transport people, but they get to locations where they're trained, so if a man or woman is having a cardiac arrest, they can probably save them. And the ambulance then has to come, take the person to the hospital. The ambulance, this is ridiculous in the ambulance situation. They had a consultant firm, the County Board of Commissioners had a consultant firm come in here out of St. Louis about 1.5 years ago. And they studied the program. And they recommended that the best way to handle it is probably with the paramedic sheriff and 1 or 2 ambulance services, not 12 to 15 that we have now, because you can fix responsibility. Now, because of the politics of this, the county board doesn't want the 1 or 2, which would be much more efficient. It just common sense tells you that, than having 15 or 16 and you don't know who's going to show up. But because of the politics, the pressure being put on the elected officials in the county to not eliminate their friends from the ambulance service, we're getting screwed around again. Now, the paramedics go into effect on January 1st, the sheriff's paramedics for the city. I doubt if they will have any kind of reasonable approach to ambulance service by then. They may have an ambulance service, but they'll have 10, 12 of those ambulance companies fighting for business and hoping and always looking out to see whether or not the person they're going after can afford the ambulance bill, because that's what a lot of this is. It's really a tragedy what's happened here. And you know, why do politicians procrastinate on such a vital issue? It's really beyond me. Well, anyway, there has been progress on that, and I'd like to believe that we had some influence with it, because we raised hell about the racism involved in this thing, and it clearly is racist to what's going on here. You know, last week we in the Journal there was a story that we thought was kind of interesting. You know, caught my eye. It involves an organization of a union by Mayor Smiley and his 9 administrative employees he appointed to guarantee their jobs if Smiley loses the election. Complete perversion of the union system. This is nothing but a scam in my mind. The next mayor, if it's not Smiley, will be stuck with all those Smiley appointees. This is not good government. Can you imagine if one of his opponents is elected, if Smiley's opponent is elected, how acrimonious the relationship will be at City Hall, and how it will really screw up the operations of the city. Burton is a strong mayor form of government, and the mayor makes his appointment to key jobs so that the citizens can fix responsibility when things go wrong. Smiley's trying to get around this to keep his people in there, completely disrupting the whole operation. You know, knowing how strongly these 9 appointees that just formed this union support Smiley, especially during election time, the bitterness that would involve as a result of such a contentious election, if Smiley's opponent were elected, would likely be highly disruptive for operating the city. Now, here are some of the positions that we're talking about here. We have the department, DPW director, DPW assistant director, the comptroller, the senior citizen director, the Smiley's executive secretary. I mean, this is crazy. You know, unions are important to protect people's rights, and they have numerous unions in the city of Burton. Probably a couple hundred people that are unionized there. These people weren't unionized because they were administrators, and you should be able to change them when a new administration comes in to fix responsibility. You know, the people have rights too. You know, really, because Smiley is trying to disrupt this strong mayor concept of government with this scam, his con job should be rejected. And the way to do this is to throw him out in the August primary when the election comes up, or no later than November if he survives the primary in August. You know, we need a mayor who can't be bribed, who doesn't meet people on a street corner and receive cash in an envelope from a briber, an admitted briber. We need somebody that's straight. Well, we'll see what happens here. But that's what happened out there on that thing. It's nothing, you know, my people were organizers in unions, in the coal mines. I think unions are great. They're necessary. But they, you know, this kind of activity gives the anti-union people something that can talk about. And that's unfortunate. It perverts unionism. Unionism ought to be for the purpose of what it's intended. And that's to take care of people who are being mistreated. This group is not being mistreated. They have all the benefits you could think of because they're friends of Smiley. And Smiley wants them to keep it, no matter if he's there or not. Now, here's another thing here. We have another leak, a mercury leak at schools at Northern High School. You know, when the first mercury spill occurred in October of '06, I think it was, we told you then there was no evidence in the school board district's records that indicated the Flint school system or even the Carmen Amesworth, because they had a spill too, their district, had followed the state law enacted in 2004, which required the specific thorough search in each school and district building for any evidence of mercury still in the building. They didn't do that, obviously. They had that big spill in October where the kids were taken out of school. They couldn't go back for 2 or 3 days. Now they have another one. And this could have been found if they had done what the law requires them to do. The health department should be following this up. They're the ones that said, yeah, we think it's okay. They should be following up with the school district and the county to make sure the law is followed and there is checking going on. If they're not doing it, make a complaint to the prosecutor. How much more mercury's out there? We don't know. You know, it's a ticking time bomb. You know, our kids deserve better. They rely on we adults to do the right thing for them. Well, anyway, that's what's happened. Do I have time to get to the last thing? Well, probably not. If I started, I'll be in the middle of it. I'll do it next week. It has to do, and I mentioned this last week, the State Senate, John Gleason, has come up with this stupid idea of banning anyone with a felony record from holding public office. You know, what happened to the American principle that if someone screws up and went to jail and he served his time, you've paid your debt to society? What's happened to that principle? Gleason would throw this whole standing doctrine out the door because I'm sure he wants to appeal to his right-wing constituents. You know, this guy ought to be drummed out of the Democratic Party. Even the Flint Journal thought it was ridiculous. They have an editorial that criticized him for it. You know, it just isn't fair. But he's not a fair guy, in my opinion. Never has been. Well, I got through it. So we'll see you next week, and